In the annals of American history, few presidents have cast as long a shadow as Donald J. Trump. His unconventional style and polarizing rhetoric have left an undeniable mark. Love him or loathe him, there has never been a U.S. president quite like Donald Trump. After a tumultuous 4 years, Trump is once again vying for the highest office. His return is a declaration of intent. Trump wants to fundamentally reshape the country in his own image. He has a detailed blueprint known as Project 2025. Will America embrace Trump's vision or reject it once and for all? Trump's return to the political arena cannot be divorced from January 6, 2021. The images of that day, a mob of his supporters fueled by his words violently breaching the U.S. Capitol, are seared into the nation's memory. It was a day of chaos, of fear, and a deep wound inflicted upon American democracy. For many, January 6th was the inevitable culmination of Trump's presidency, characterized by a disregard for norms and a constant stoking of division. His critics argue he spent 4 years chipping away at democracy, sowing seeds of doubt about the electoral process. They point to his repeated claims of a rigged election and his incendiary language on January 6th as evidence of encouraging insurrection. For them, Trump's return represents a clear and present danger to American society. What exactly is Project 2025? It's a question swirling around Washington and beyond, a source of both intrigue and apprehension. Some dismiss it as a fundraising ploy, others see it as a plan to alter the balance of power. While details remain secret, leaks paint a disturbing picture. It's said to be a blueprint for a second Trump term unlike anything America has ever seen. One where democracy's guardrails are dismantled, consolidating power in the executive branch. Central to this is Schedule F, replacing career civil servants with loyalists, weakening independent agencies and curtailing Congress's power. It's about reshaping American society in Trump's image. The prospect of a second Trump term has laid bare the deep divisions within American society. The country is more polarized than it has been in decades, split along political, social, and cultural lines. Trump's candidacy has exacerbated these divisions, turning neighbor against neighbor and family member against family member. On one side stand Trump's supporters, united by their belief in his leadership and America First agenda. On the other side stand Trump's detractors, united by their opposition to his policies and rhetoric. They view him as a demagogue, a threat to democracy, and a danger to the nation. The 2020 election was perhaps the most consequential in American history. It was a referendum on Donald Trump and the nation's soul. In the end, it was a rejection of Trumpism, division, and chaos. But Trump refused to go quietly. He peddled baseless claims of voter fraud and pressured state officials. His actions eroded trust in democracy and set the stage for violence. As Biden prepared to take office, Trump retreated to Mar-a-Lago. Even in defeat, he remained a potent force in politics. In the aftermath of January 6th, there were calls for accountability, demands that Trump and his enablers be held responsible for inciting the insurrection. The House of Representatives impeached Trump for a second time, charging him with incitement of insurrection, but he was acquitted by the Senate, with most Republicans voting against conviction. The Justice Department, under the leadership of Attorney General Merrick Garland, launched a sprawling investigation into the events of January 6th, seeking to identify and prosecute those responsible for the violence. Hundreds of individuals who stormed the Capitol were arrested and charged with crimes ranging from trespassing to assault. A House Select Committee was formed to investigate the attack, holding a series of high-profile hearings that presented damning evidence of Trump's role in inciting the violence. The committee's investigation painted a chilling picture of Trump's efforts to overturn the election, his pressure campaign on state officials, and his inaction as the Capitol was under attack. Despite the overwhelming evidence, Trump remained defiant, dismissing the investigations as politically motivated witch hunts. He continued to spread lies about the election, casting himself as a victim of a deep state conspiracy. His supporters, many of whom believed his claims, rallied around him, creating a climate of impunity that threatened the very foundations of American democracy. While Trump himself may have been out of office, the movement he built remained as strong as ever. The Make America Great Again, MAGA, movement morphed from a presidential campaign slogan into a powerful political force, a symbol of a deep-seated anger and resentment that resonated with millions of Americans. Fueled by a steady diet of misinformation and conspiracy theories, often spread through right-wing media outlets and online platforms, the MAGA base remained fiercely loyal to Trump. They viewed him as a champion of the forgotten man, a fighter against the elites, and a protector of traditional values. Trump, never one to shy away from the spotlight, continued to hold rallies and events, using them to rail against his perceived enemies, spread his message, and maintain his grip on his base. He also established his own social media platform, Truth Social, after being banned from Twitter and Facebook, providing him with a direct line of communication to his supporters. The MAGA machine, with its vast network of donors, activists, and media personalities, became a powerful force in Republican politics, shaping the party's agenda and influencing its candidates. Trump's endorsement became highly sought after in Republican primaries, and those who dared to cross him often found themselves facing the wrath of his loyal base. While Trump remained a popular figure among his base, not everyone who had served in his administration shared his unwavering belief in the stolen election narrative. Some, horrified by the events of January 6th and disillusioned by Trump's actions, broke with him, publicly denouncing his behavior and warning of the dangers he posed to American democracy. Former members of his inner circle, once loyal lieutenants, began to speak out, offering first-hand accounts of the chaos and dysfunction that had plagued his presidency. Their testimonies, often delivered in hushed tones and with a sense of trepidation, painted a disturbing picture of a president who was more interested in consolidating his own power than in serving the American people. Books were written, interviews were given, and congressional testimonies were delivered, each offering a glimpse behind the curtain of the Trump White House. These accounts, often conflicting and sometimes self-serving, nonetheless provided valuable insights into the inner workings of his administration and the man himself. Some painted a portrait of a president who was impulsive, vindictive, and easily manipulated by those around him. Others described a shrewd operator who was always in control, playing a calculated game of political chess. Regardless of the perspective, one thing became clear: the Trump White House was a place of constant turmoil where loyalty was demanded and dissent was rarely tolerated. The Republican Party, once a bastion of conservative values and fiscal responsibility, found itself increasingly divided in the wake of Trump's presidency. On one side were those who remained fiercely loyal to Trump, embracing his populist message and his combative style. They viewed him as the savior of the party, the only one who could make America great again. These true believers controlled the levers of power within the party, dominating its primaries and pushing its agenda further to the right. They sought to punish those who had dared to cross Trump, purging the party of dissenters and rewarding those who displayed unwavering loyalty. On the other side were those who viewed Trump as a threat to the party and the country, a demagogue who had hijacked the GOP for his own personal gain. These Republicans, often representing the party's more traditional establishment wing, found themselves increasingly marginalized. They faced a difficult choice: toe the line and risk alienating their constituents, or speak out against Trump and face the wrath of his supporters. Some, like Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, chose to put country over party, serving on the January 6th committee and facing censure and primary challenges as a result. As the 2024 election approached, the stakes for America had never been higher. Trump's return to the political arena, his vow to make America great again, raised profound questions about the future of American democracy. Could a country so deeply divided, so riven by partisan rancor, find a way forward? Trump's candidacy represented a stress test for American institutions, a test of whether its system of checks and balances could withstand the pressures exerted by a demagogic leader. It also exposed the fragility of American democracy, its susceptibility to misinformation, disinformation, and the erosion of trust. The outcome of the election would have far-reaching consequences, not just for America, but for the world. A Trump victory would embolden autocrats and undermine democratic movements around the globe. It would also signal a retreat from the global stage, a return to an America-first foreign policy that prioritizes isolationism and unilateral action. A Biden victory, on the other hand, would offer a chance for America to heal its divisions, to restore its standing in the world, and to reclaim its role as a beacon of democracy and freedom. It would also provide an opportunity to address the systemic problems that Trump's presidency had exposed, from the influence of money in politics to the spread of misinformation online. The world watched with fascination and trepidation as America grappled with its political demons. Trump's presidency had shaken the global order, upending alliances and emboldening adversaries. The 2024 election would have profound implications for global security and diplomacy. A Trump victory would likely lead to a more unpredictable world. His America-first approach had alienated allies and emboldened adversaries. A Biden victory would be seen as a return to normalcy, restoring America's traditional role. Biden pledged to repair alliances and work collaboratively to address global challenges. However, the damage to America's global standing might not be easily repaired. At the heart of Project 2025 lies a deep-seated suspicion of the federal bureaucracy, what conservatives often refer to as the administrative state. This intricate network of agencies and departments, Trump views the administrative state as a bloated and unaccountable behemoth, a deep state operating beyond the reach of democratic accountability. Project 2025 aims to systematically dismantle the administrative state, concentrating power in the hands of the executive branch. Critics warn it would have devastating consequences for the effective functioning of government. Trump's foreign policy during his first term was characterized by a disdain for multilateralism, a skepticism of traditional alliances, and a transactional approach to international relations. He withdrew the United States from international agreements like the Paris Climate Accord and the Iran nuclear deal, alienated long-standing allies, and cozied up to authoritarian leaders. Project 2025 suggests a continuation, if not an intensification, of this America-first approach. Trump has made it clear that he sees the world as a zero-sum game, where America's gain is necessarily another country's loss. He has expressed admiration for strongmen like Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping, leaders who rule with an iron fist and brook no dissent. His supporters applaud his willingness to challenge the status quo, his rejection of what they see as globalist agendas that undermine American sovereignty. They believe that America has been taken advantage of by its allies and that it's time to put America's interests first, even if it means alienating partners or disrupting the global order. Critics, however, warn that Trump's foreign policy is based on a fundamental misunderstanding of how the world works. They argue that it has damaged America's reputation, weakened its alliances, and emboldened its adversaries. They fear that another 4 years of Trump would further isolate America on the world stage, making it more difficult to address global challenges like climate change, pandemics, and nuclear proliferation. Section 3. The Courts and the Culture Wars. Trump's enduring legacy is his impact on the judiciary. He appointed 3 conservative justices, cementing a conservative majority. This court may overturn Roe v. Wade, allowing states to ban abortion. Project 2025 suggests more conservative judicial appointments. This impacts issues like gun control, LGBTQ+ rights, and campaign finance reform. Supporters see courts as a battleground in the culture wars. They want a more originalist approach to the Constitution. Critics fear this erodes democratic norms and institutions. Section 4. The economy according to Trump. Trump's economic policies during his first term were characterized by tax cuts, deregulation, and protectionist trade policies. He argued that these measures would boost economic growth, create jobs, and put America first in the global economy. While the economy did experience a period of growth during his presidency, critics argue that the benefits were largely enjoyed by the wealthy and corporations. Project 2025 is likely to double down on these economic policies, with Trump promising to further cut taxes, roll back regulations, and renegotiate trade deals. He has also expressed support for reducing social safety net programs, arguing that they disincentivize work and encourage dependency. His supporters, many of whom are drawn to his message of economic populism, believe that he is a successful businessman who understands how to create jobs and grow the economy. They applaud his tax cuts and deregulation efforts, arguing that they unleash the power of the free market. Critics, however, argue that Trump's economic policies are based on trickle-down economics, a discredited theory that has been shown to exacerbate income inequality and benefit the wealthy at the expense of the poor and middle class. They point to the growing national debt, the widening gap between the rich and poor, and the vulnerability of the economy to shocks as evidence that Trump's policies are unsustainable in the long term. Section 5. The environmental impact. Trump has long been a skeptic of climate change, dismissing it as a hoax perpetrated by China. During his first term, he rolled back environmental regulations, withdrew the United States from the Paris Climate Accord, and promoted the use of fossil fuels. These actions were met with widespread condemnation from scientists and environmental activists, who warned that they would have devastating consequences for the planet. Project 2025 is unlikely to offer any solace for those concerned about the environment. Trump has given no indication that he has changed his views on climate change, and his administration is likely to continue to prioritize economic growth over environmental protection. His supporters, many of whom live in areas that rely heavily on fossil fuel industries, applaud his efforts to deregulate the energy sector and promote American energy independence. They argue that environmental regulations stifle economic growth, and that climate change is either a hoax or not as serious a threat as scientists claim. Critics, however, point to the increasing frequency and intensity of extreme weather events, the rising sea levels, and the growing body of scientific evidence as proof that climate change is real, human-caused, and an urgent threat. They argue that Trump's environmental policies are not only irresponsible but also morally reprehensible, as they prioritize short-term economic gain over the long-term health of the planet and the well-being of future generations. Section 6. Immigration and the Wall. Immigration was a defining issue of Trump's first campaign and presidency. He rose to power on a wave of anti-immigrant sentiment, promising to build a wall along the US-Mexico border, ban Muslims from entering the country, and crack down on illegal immigration. While he was unable to fully implement his agenda, he did make significant changes to immigration policy, including separating families at the border and reducing the number of refugees admitted to the United States. Project 2025 suggests a continuation of these hardline policies, with Trump likely to double down on his efforts to restrict both legal and illegal immigration. He has expressed support for ending birthright citizenship, limiting family-based migration, and building more walls along the US border. His supporters, many of whom view immigration as a threat to American culture and security, applaud his tough stance on immigration. They believe that he is protecting American jobs, preventing crime, and preserving American values. Critics, however, argue that Trump's immigration policies are cruel, inhumane, and counterproductive. They point to the economic contributions of immigrants, the cultural richness they bring to American society, and the fact that immigration strengthens rather than weakens the country. Section 7. The Specter of Authoritarianism. One of the most alarming aspects of Project 2025 is its potential to further erode democratic norms and institutions in the United States. Trump's first term was marked by a disregard for the rule of law, attacks on the free press, and attempts to undermine the integrity of elections. He repeatedly questioned the legitimacy of the judiciary, attacked his political opponents as enemies of the people, and spread misinformation and conspiracy theories. Project 2025 suggests a continuation of these authoritarian tendencies, with Trump likely to further consolidate power in the executive branch, weaken checks and balances, and silence dissent. He has expressed admiration for authoritarian leaders, questioned the legitimacy of elections, and shown a willingness to use the power of government to punish his enemies. His supporters, many of whom are drawn to his strongman persona, dismiss concerns about authoritarianism as overblown. They believe that he is a strong leader who is not afraid to take on the establishment and that his actions are justified by the need to make America great again. Critics, however, warn that Trump's behavior is characteristic of authoritarian leaders throughout history. They argue that he is a threat to American democracy, and that his actions could have long-lasting consequences for the future of the country. Section 8. The Global Implications. The United States has long been considered a beacon of democracy and a guarantor of global stability. However, Trump's presidency, with its America First policies, its withdrawal from international agreements, and its cozying up to authoritarian leaders, has shaken the global order and raised questions about America's role in the world. Project 2025 suggests a further retreat from global engagement, a continuation of Trump's unilateralist approach to foreign policy. This would have profound implications for global security, trade, and diplomacy. Trump's supporters, many of whom believe that the United States has been taken advantage of by its allies, applaud his efforts to put America's interests first. They argue that the United States should no longer be the world's policeman, and that it's time for other countries to pull their own weight. Critics, however, warn that Trump's foreign policy is based on a fundamental misunderstanding of how the world works. They argue that it has damaged America's reputation, weakened its alliances, and emboldened its adversaries. They fear that another 4 years of Trump would further isolate America on the world stage, making it more difficult to address global challenges like climate change, pandemics, and nuclear proliferation. Despite the controversies, the scandals, and the insurrection, Donald Trump retains a devoted following, a base of supporters who remain fiercely loyal to him and his vision for America. They are drawn to his charisma, his defiance of political correctness, and his promise to make America great again. For these Americans, often overlooked by the coastal elites, Trump is a voice for the voiceless, a champion of the forgotten man. They see him as a successful businessman who understands the struggles of everyday people, a Washington outsider who isn't beholden to special interests. They believe in his message of economic nationalism, his tough stance on immigration, and his promise to restore law and order. They trust him to stand up for their values, to protect their interests, and to make America strong again. To his most ardent supporters, Trump represents more than just a politician. He embodies a movement, a rejection of the status quo, and a yearning for a return to a time when America felt, in their view, safer, more prosperous, and more respected on the world stage. Trump's presidency and his subsequent efforts to overturn the 2020 election have shaken the foundations of American democracy, eroding trust in institutions, deepening partisan divides, and fueling a crisis of faith in the very idea of self-government. His rhetoric, often laced with misinformation and inflammatory language, has created a climate of fear and distrust, making it increasingly difficult to have civil discourse or find common ground. His actions, particularly his attempts to pressure state officials to overturn election results, have led some to question his commitment to democratic principles. The scars of January 6th, a day that saw a mob of Trump supporters storm the U.S. Capitol in an attempt to prevent the peaceful transfer of power, run deep. The images of that day, a stark reminder of the fragility of democracy, continue to haunt the nation. The events of that day, and the events that led up to it, have left many Americans feeling disillusioned, angry, and uncertain about the future of their country. They have also raised profound questions about the role of truth, accountability, and the peaceful transfer of power in a democracy. Despite the chaos of the Trump years, his brand of populist nationalism, often referred to as Trumpism, continues to resonate with a significant segment of the American population. It offers simple solutions to complex problems, blaming immigrants, minorities, and liberal elites for the country's woes. Trump's presidency has exacerbated existing divisions in American society, deepening racial and ethnic tensions, widening the gap between rich and poor, and fueling a culture war. The Republican Party, once a bastion of fiscal conservatism, free trade, and a strong national defense, finds itself at a crossroads. Trump's rise to power has exposed a deep rift within the party, between those who embrace his brand of populist nationalism and those who adhere to the party's more traditional values. They worry that he has hijacked the party for his own personal gain, turning it into a cult of personality rather than a vehicle for conservative principles. The prospect of a second Trump presidency fills many Americans with a sense of dread, fearing further erosion of democratic norms and increased division. The world watches with a mixture of fascination, amusement, and alarm as the United States grapples with the phenomenon of Donald Trump. To many around the world, Trump represents a threat to the liberal international order, a destabilizing force who undermines democratic norms and institutions. As the specter of a second Trump presidency looms, a palpable sense of unease grips those who have dedicated their lives to safeguarding American democracy and its standing in the world. Central to the experts' concerns is the damage that another Trump presidency could inflict on America's already strained alliances. Beyond the immediate impact on alliances and international relations, experts warn of a broader global reckoning should Trump return to power. They argue that Trump's disdain for climate science, his withdrawal from the Paris Climate Accord, and his rollback of environmental regulations would have devastating consequences for the planet. The erosion of democratic norms and institutions within the United States is perhaps the most alarming concern voiced by experts. They warn that another Trump presidency could inflict lasting damage on the very fabric of American democracy, normalizing authoritarian behavior and undermining the rule of law. The experts' warnings about the potential consequences of another Trump presidency are not limited to abstract threats to democracy or the erosion of international norms. The warnings from strategy, security, and defense experts paint a sobering picture of the potential consequences of a second Trump presidency. The choice before the American people in 2024 is not simply between two candidates or two parties. The specter of a second Trump presidency has forced America to confront a sobering reality. Trumpism, far from being a fleeting phenomenon, has taken root deep within the nation's soul. Regardless of the outcome of future elections, the legacy of Trumpism will continue to shape America's political and social landscape for decades to come. The United States stands at a pivotal crossroads, a juncture where the path it chooses will determine its destiny for generations to come. The choice before the nation is stark: succumb to the siren song of division and decline, or rise to the challenge of renewing its commitment to the ideals of democracy and equality. The American experiment, a bold and fragile endeavor since its inception, faces a profound test in the wake of the Trump era. The outcome of this test will have far-reaching consequences, not just for the United States, but for the very idea of democracy itself. The world is watching, observing with a mixture of hope and trepidation as America grapples with its internal divisions and its role on the global stage. Can this nation, once a beacon of hope and inspiration, summon the will to heal its wounds, to bridge its divides, and to reaffirm its commitment to the principles of democracy and freedom? The answer to this question lies not in the hands of politicians or pundits, but in the collective actions of ordinary citizens. It demands a renewed commitment to civic engagement, to informed dialogue, and to holding leaders accountable for their actions. The future of democracy, in America and beyond, hinges on the unwavering belief in the power of the people to shape their own destiny, to demand better from their leaders, and to create a more just and equitable world for generations to come. It is a future worth fighting for, a future that begins with each and every one of us.